I was thinking about how my dad taught me this sort of fix-it brain. It's an odd thing. I realize now that not everybody is always delving into how things work. But my dad had this wonderful game where when we would travel to, say we were at a Amish gathering, there was a big pancake breakfast or whatever, or anytime we'd go into like the old, the cider mill, was all this old machinery, or even just at a garage sale or like a big swap meet kind of thing. There's all this old machinery sitting around, and my dad and I had this game where we would pick up something, some little broken piece of something, and say, what is this from and what did it do? And it's kind of a Sherlock Holmes mentality. You'd look for where it was worn, you'd look for what it was made of, whether it could withstand temperature or not. You'd look at for like if it had a pivot, how worn was the pivot, how was it you'd be able to figure out what this thing would best, what sort of forces it could apply, what sort of motion it could make, and therefore you could deduce what it did. And so we would make up, sort of like the balderdash game, we would make up, well, this is obviously a part of a machine that was designed to, and then we'd make up this ridiculous story of a very plausible thing that this piece of machinery could have done. And there's, sort of strict rules about like why would they make it out of steel if it didn't have to withstand temperature, because plastic would have been better. And so you just assume that everything was done for a reason, and every little mark on the casting had a reason for being there. If there was a little flat spot in the casting, that's harder to make than just making it all smooth. You'd have to, there'd be a reason, there'd be something that went against there, there'd be a little screw that held the limit of motion or something, and so that meant it had to be adjustable, which meant it had to be a very precise amount of movement, and so you could make a case for whatever you were sort of proposing this thing was for. And that game was just one way of kind of congratulating each other for thinking like that all the time. Anytime, I used to say, I can fix anything, and if you take your time and take it apart slowly and make sure you study everything about it as you're taking it apart, you can figure out most things, unless. So I love the way of thinking, and when I apply that to like everything else in my life, it does really confound some people that I'm always sort of trying to figure things out and trying to know why things are the way they are. For example, I'm still like trying to be able to comfortably reside in opposite sides of an argument, just like the song Good Together. I'm trying to find the beautiful sort of wisdom that can bridge a divide, like and some people just kind of like are amazed at that, like, why would you care? You know what you believe, why does it matter? And I say, yeah, but I want to know sort of how they've come to their conclusions, how they think what they think, how they know what they know. And so it doesn't make anything really easier to have a fix-it brain, except that it makes it sort of a very satisfying kind of way of feeling about sort of knowing that if you believe something, it's not just sort of a place that you happen to stop and ossify. It's a place that you came to on purpose, and that has a nice resonance to it. So I don't mean I don't mind being the guy that always has to understand why he does what he does. It's a fun thing.